Hi everybody, this is a game that I played tonight. The opening was a Sicilian C3 variation, where white plays C3 and the echo is B22. I was black and the time control was 6 minutes with 6 seconds on each move. So let's take a look. My opponent played E4, I played C5, C3, and that's the Sicilian C3 of course, knight f6, E5, knight d5, d4. I play c takes d4, c takes d4, and d6. Here, of course, white can play several moves. Knight f3. He can play bishop c4, f4, only to sort of strengthen the center here. But he played e takes d6. I play queen takes d6, knight to f3, knight c6. This is all booked so far. Bishop e2, bishop g4. Just getting that bishop out before closing this diagonal with the move e6, obviously. Knight c3, a6, castles, bishop e7, h3. I don't really know what to say about these moves. I mean, like I said, this is all book, and for example, after h3, black can choose either between taking on f3, but that's probably not a very good idea, especially since that knight on d5 would be almost forced to move, because after bishop takes f3, then there's both the bishop and the knight attacking the d5 square. So obviously I play bishop h5, going to f5 is not a very good idea. I think it's kind of better to hold this pin, although it's not really a pin because obviously the knight can move any time because there's a bishop on e2. But he played knight to e4. I went to c7. Although this is still part of opening theory, I was expecting a move like knight e5 or at some point, maybe not exactly here. Well, obviously not here, because if knight to e5, then I would just take the bishop over here, and when he takes back, the pawn on d4 would hang, so obviously it doesn't work here. So bishop e3, I play castles, rook c1, rook a to c8. I believe that this is still opening theory, or maybe not. I actually ran this game through Fritz, and I believe that, okay, according to this, the book I'm using right now, why should I play queen to b3 just to stay in the book, but he played rook c1, so I suppose that's out of the book. So rook a to c8, and the reason I play rook to c8 is here, well, twofold basically. One is to, well, if he would ever play knight to e5 at some point, or maybe also g4, then obviously I'll have to play queen b6, because when he takes, I don't want to take it back with the pawn, because then I would have a weak pawn on c6. And the reason for that is that my queen is now on c7 and his rook is on c1, so I'd have to take back with the pawn. Well, that's not one scenario. And the other is that it's always good to put the rooks on open or semi-open files. I mean, only my knight is in front of my rook in that case, so to speak. So for those two reasons, good. So he played a3, maybe to start a move like knight to b4 or whatever. Possibly also preparing b4. I'll play rook f to d8. Like I said, it's good to put the rooks on open or semi-open files, but also his pawn on d4 is kind of weak. I have both the knight and now the rook on this pawn, so to speak, in case my knight on d5 ever moves. And here we play knight to e5, because now obviously the pawn on d4 is protected by the bishop. I'll just play bishop e2 because, well, if I play bishop g6, although I'm attacking this knight over here, but then he also has the option to take the bishop on g6, doubling my pawns. Although it's not really a problem here, because I'll just take back with the h pawn, and it will look pretty good anyway. But that's part of. I believe the bishop takes e2 is better. He took back, queen b6, and here I play queen b6 because now obviously I don't want to have my queen in front of my rook when his rook is on c1, but also, like I said, I don't want to take back with the pawn because that will just leave me with a weak pawn on c6. So he played knight c4, attacking my queen. Queen c7, and maybe he could have even drawn here. I don't know. Maybe if we go, for example, off the queen to c7, he could have played the knight back to e5, but I don't know. Maybe at that point I actually would have accepted the fact that taken back with the c pawn, perhaps. I'm not sure. But also as white, you probably don't want to play for a draw. So he played queen f3, putting some more pressure on the d5 square, perhaps. Queen d7. The point with queen d7 is that after knight to e5, okay, he played rook after e1. I played b6 to stop any, knight c5 ideas. He played knight e5, and my point here with queen to d7 in the first play was to play queen f8. Now my rook and my queen are both protecting my knight on c6. So he played knight to g3, bishop f6, and here he just actually analyzed this game with Fritz, like I said, after the game, and Fritz didn't seem to have any opinions on his knight to h5 moves. Obviously I'm winning a pawn here. Queen g3, maybe that was his idea, I'm not really sure. Knight g6, rook takes c8, rook takes c8, bishop d4. It looks kind of tempting to play e5 here, but that doesn't really work, obviously, because my knight is hanging on d5. Because then he would just trade everything off over here and then simply pick up my knight on d5. So I played f6. He played f4. Queen f4, a4, attacking his rook here on d1. b3, giving up a pawn on a3. I'll just play queen takes a3. And notice that, although it looks kind of dangerous, his f5 idea here, but it doesn't really work anyway, because he doesn't really have any discoveries anywhere. I mean, for example, with this bishop, for example, this pawn, I would just take back my knight, and if this pawn, I would take back my knight again. So it doesn't work. He doesn't have any discoveries anywhere. So I just took queen f3, and now knight back to e7, protecting my pawn and getting away from the threat, obviously. He played queen b7, and after queen takes b3, he's down a bunch of pawns, rook e1, and now queen b4. The only move is the one he played, bishop f2, and now after knight to e5, this knight is protected by my queen, and the knight is also protecting my rook. I noticed that if this knight ever moves, it would be checkmate over here right away. So it was kind of surprising, because this knight over here wasn't really doing much, but it wasn't really doing much, but it can be dangerous to allow a piece like that just be there, it didn't work out for him this time, and also, of course, when you allow a piece to be that passive, it's not very good, because that game, it was sort of way out of the game anyway, so he couldn't come up with any ideas. So, well, I guess that's about it. If we take a quick look at the opening one more time, it was a Sicilian c3. There are many variations, obviously, in this opening, and I suppose the final book move was my castles, and then after rook c1 he should have played queen b3. That would have been in the opening.